Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're visually deconstructing one of the most dynamic effects in sports photography. If you've ever wondered how a photographer freezes a moment but still makes you feel the literal rush of the wind, well, you're in exactly the right place.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Just look at the raw adrenaline captured here. This is the 2024 Gastown Grand Prix, shot by photographer Ching-Tai Wong. And man, you don't just see this picture, you genuinely feel it. The sheer chaos of the peloton, the unadulterated velocity of these athletes tearing around a tight city corner. It's intense, it's visceral, and it completely throws you right into the middle of the race, practically inches away from those spinning tires.
But seeing an image like that begs a pretty fascinating question. How do you actually capture a 60-kilometer-per-hour sprint in a single, perfectly still frame? I mean, think about the inherent problem with traditional sports photography. If you crank up to a super fast shutter speed to freeze the action completely, the athletes usually end up looking like they're just parked on the street. You lose all that kinetic energy. But on the flip side, if things are too blurry, you can't even tell what you're looking at. You need that feeling of speed, absolutely, but you also need the subject to be recognizable. And that is a massive creative and technical challenge.
Well, the secret to pulling this off is a technique called the zoom burst, sometimes known as a zoom in or zoom out. And it's actually surprisingly mechanical. Basically, the photographer physically twists the camera's zoom lens at the exact fraction of a second the shutter is open. This simple yet incredibly precise action creates those striking radial blur lines you see streaking toward the center of the frame. It's a brilliant technique because it means the speed you're seeing isn't just happening out there on the track, it is actively being created right inside the camera lens itself.
Now, notice the distinct visual contrast happening right in front of us. Let your eyes wander to the edges first. It's total chaos on the periphery, right? The bright red jerseys, the spinning wheels, the texture of the pavement, they're all streaking wildly, just blending into one another. But as you pull your gaze toward that center rider in the white helmet, the image magically stabilizes. That stark, dramatic contrast between the chaotic, blurred edges and the relatively frozen, sharp center, that is the AppPhoto hallmark for a perfectly executed zoom burst.
Actually pulling this off in the real world, though, that takes an incredible amount of physical coordination. It's essentially an acrobatic feat for the photographer. First off, you have to deliberately slow down your shutter speed. Instead of a rapid, split-second click, the camera's sensor needs a fraction of a second more time to gather that light and record the motion. Second, you gotta track the speeding cyclist perfectly in the center of your viewfinder as they blow past. And then comes the magic move, twisting the zoom ring on your lens exactly while that shutter clicks open. You're simultaneously panning your body with the rider while actively zooming the lens barrel in or out with your hand. It's wild.
And this brilliantly illustrates that optical pull. By comparing two frames of a nearly identical moment, you can really see how varying degrees of blur completely change how your eye enters the photo. The streaking lines from the zoom burst act almost like a funnel. They aggressively pull your focus past all that blurred movement in the foreground and lock your eyes dead onto the intense, concentrated facial expression of the cyclist in the white jersey. It forcibly strips away the surrounding distractions and dictates exactly where you, the viewer, must look.
But this technique doesn't just dictate focus, it builds staggering depth. Take a look specifically at the rider in the bright pink jersey dominating the right foreground. By catching this foreground rider right in the most aggressive part of the zoom blur, they almost become an apparition, like a massive flash of color rushing past our eyes. This intense foreground blur significantly amplifies the feeling of explosive speed, while doing a perfect job of isolating our main subject tucked right behind them in the sharp center. It gives what is technically a flat, two-dimensional photograph the staggering three-dimensional feeling of depth.
So, what does this all mean? The crucial takeaway is understanding exactly why this optical trick works so flawlessly for high-octane sports photography. First, as we've seen, it creates dynamic radial leading lines that naturally draw the human eye inward. Second, it perfectly isolates the central subject, carving them out from the messy, chaotic background of a packed street race. But third, and honestly, I think this is the most important part, it simulates the visceral tunnel vision that an athlete actually experiences in the heat of a massive sprint. When you're cycling at top speed, your peripheral vision naturally blurs out, and all that matters is that narrow path directly ahead. With this technique, the photographer is quite literally putting us inside the racer's headspace.
And that internal experience is exactly what we see captured here. Pure focus amidst the absolute chaos of the final sprint. Think about it. Without the zoom burst technique, this might just be a standard, relatively flat shot of a crowded bicycle race. The surrounding buildings would be sharp, the background spectators would be distracting, and the sheer terrifying energy of the sprint would be entirely lost. But by mastering the camera's shutter speed and physically manipulating that zoom ring, The photographer transforms a static medium into a masterful, high-octane display of kinetic energy. The photograph breathes, and you can practically hear the whir of the gears.
I mean, this is the absolute climax of this visual technique. We've got an incredibly dense pack of riders, leaning in, practically shoulder to shoulder, and they are completely framed by this overwhelming radial blur. Because of how the light is streaking from the edges toward that sharp center, it genuinely feels like this entire pack of cyclists is launching directly out of the image, right at us. This isn't just taking a picture anymore, this is the ultimate realization of manipulating time, light, and motion through a piece of glass to convey pure emotion. It captures the sound, the danger, and the absolute thrill of the race all in one go.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought to take away from our explainer today. We've seen how physically twisting a camera lens for just a fraction of a second can turn a simple city street corner into a warp-speed tunnel of adrenaline. So how might you use this technique to capture the motion in your own life? Whether it's your kids running across the backyard, a passing train on your commute, or the fast-paced action at your own local sporting events, motion is absolutely everywhere. The question is, how will you choose to freeze it, blur it, and bring it to life? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this inspires you to look at the fast-moving world around you just a little bit differently.